Okay, so we're going to talk about your trigger job. And, you know, I'm not a gunsmith, guys. I just learn as I go. I like to tweak my own firearms, you know, simple stuff. But I'm not going to be responsible for, you know, anything that goes wrong here. You do this at your own risk. I'm just showing you how I do it, right? And I'm not doing very drastic, but still. Anyway, what I do is right here, trigger, I guess trigger arm here, the trigger assembly, this little spot here, use a spot here that connects to your sear cam is where I polish, right? Just right here where it connects, just to make it a little bit smoother. I take the sear cam itself and painstakingly take 1200 or 1000 grit sandpaper and smooth it out, but especially right here around the edge where it makes contact. That way, and I put that copper grease here, I'll show you that here, but when it connects, the smoother this is, the better, right? The smoother your trigger is going to be. I mean, smooth for a Hi-Point anyway. And the other thing is to pack, again, I'll do it again for you, pack the sear and sear spring with copper grease. So I pack that sucker. There we are. Then stick the sear spring in there. And actually it's already packed up, but so then place that back in. Put a dab. And this copper grease, I get it on from a buddy. I made a video about it. Again, if you want it, eBay, couple bucks. The Glock copper grease and no mess applicator. And I've used most of this guy already. I don't buy it from eBay. It's my buddy. Just go pick it up. Hey man, here, it's a couple bucks. Hook me up. So that right there will smoothen your trigger just a little bit, right? Every little bit helps, especially with a Hi-Point. So then, okay, so let me show you what else you can do to sweeten this trigger a little bit. Get a smoother trigger, well, smooth for a Hi-Point anyway. Now this thing is unloaded. I just put it together. There was no ammo, as you saw, but you know, point in the safe direction anyway. And you would just tug on this trigger, right, to sweeten it out. A little wear and tear, kinda. You do that for a couple weeks, I would recommend, you know, especially if it's new, right? Especially if it's new. And wait, you know, wait till the kiddos, girlfriend, wife, nobody's around or whatever, you know, roommates or whatever the case may be, and just do this, right? As much as you can, and do that for a couple weeks. It'll lighten the sear spring a little bit. Of course, the best thing in the world to smoothen that trigger is to run like at least 500 rounds through that thing, right? That'll break it in, smooth out all the burrs and everything, especially if it's new. That's the best thing in the world. And besides that, you wanna, if you're gonna use this thing for, you know, if you're gonna carry it or if you're gonna use it for home defense, you wanna make sure you pick an ammo that it likes, right? You don't want to find out that it's something that's not going to work when you need it to work. So I'd recommend, of course, 500 rounds at least. Don't let down range, smoothing it out. Now, I personally, this is me, you do whatever you like, but this is what I like to do. I keep the same old sear spring in there. It seems to be of good quality, a good thick spring. It's not like the others that just give out real easily. Now the sear spring, you know, I like it because it's smoother, because it's been, you know, worn in a little bit. So I keep that around. I do recommend you change out every, say, 1,000 to 1,500 rounds. I would recommend you change out your recoil spring, your magazine catch spring, your extractor spring, and your firing pin assembly springs, right? And I like to heat treat those. So put them aside after that many rounds, swap it out. Eventually, If the sear gets too light, I'll swap that out. Okay, now on the sear spring, there is a guy on YouTube who swapped his sear spring out. He had a 40 cal, I think. He swapped it out for a clicker pen, right? And that is just too light of a spring for a sear. For those of you who don't know, the sear spring is what holds, of course, your sear assembly in place, holding the recoil, I mean your firing pin, right? You pull the trigger, it drops the sear out of the way. The firing pin, the springs strike the primer on the round. So if you have a light spring, you risk, if you're going to carry this thing, I mean, you risk shooting yourself in the foot, or you might even, accidentally blow someone's head off, man. So you don't want to use a clicker pen spring or something like that. Sure as hell wouldn't use a clicker pen spring, and I wouldn't cut any coils off of your sear spring either, right? I just recommend wear and tear on that spring personally, right? But again, you guys, you do what you want at your own risk, but that's what I like to do. Just keep the same one that's smoothened out. I do not recommend doing that clicker pen at all, man. I recommend against it. You're going to accidentally kill somebody. All right.